Welcome to Awake to Oneness Radio. I am Caroline Chang, your host. The mission of Awake to Oneness Radio is to inspire the world to awaken to the universal truth of oneness. Science is teaching us that all life is interconnected. And also, spirituality and ancient wisdom has been teaching us this truth for eons. So what you do to another person, you're literally doing to another aspect of yourself. And when mankind awakens to the universal truth of oneness, there will be peace on earth. Today's show topic is a conversation with Neale Donald Walsch. Neale is the author of the well-known book series Conversations with God, and he just recently released the new book, Conversations with God, Book 4, Awaken the Species. Welcome, Neale, to Awake to Oneness Radio. I'm so, and thank you. I am so honored to have you. I am very familiar with you and your work. I recently, the last few weeks, got to meet you on Zoom, I'll say video conference, the last few weeks, because I am now working with Humanity's team, is the foundation that you founded about 15 years ago. And I've been with them now for a year, and I love working with Humanity's team. It's an amazing organization. But I know many listeners are very familiar with you, like I am. But there are a handful that may not be. So can you please share your journey, your story with our listeners?
Well, I'd be happy to. Caroline, thank you for asking me to. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
All right, wonderful. Caroline, my journey, as you put it, and it's a good word to use because it has been a journey, really began for me many years ago, 40 years ago, when I began to realize that my life as I was living it, while it was full and it felt successful in many ways, in ways of the world, mm-hmm. It did not bring me a sense of inner peace and inner satisfaction. It felt like I was always experiencing inner emotional turmoil, or at the very least a level of dissatisfaction, thinking that there must be something more, there must be something greater, but I didn't know what it was, and I began searching for it. When I turned 45, 48, in those last 5 years of my 40s, I really began to feel that frustration at a very high level. And then something quite extraordinary happened. I had an automobile accident in which I broke my neck. And it wasn't a small hairline fracture. It was a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture of the 7th cervical vertebrae posteriorly. In other words, it was a fracture large enough to put a pen or a pencil through. It was a very large fracture. And the doctors told me, really 95% of the people who have that kind of a neck fracture die instantly because it involves a severing of the spinal cord, and that's the end of your life. Those who don't die are almost always paralyzed from the neck down. And neither of those things happened to me, and the doctors said that I was a walking miracle, that how could I have escaped that kind of an injury, a snapped neck, and literally walk away from it. So, of course, I was in therapy for 2 years, but I was neither dead nor paralyzed. So I'll take the third alternative. But during that 2 years of therapy, and I was in therapy daily for about 6 or 8 months, then twice a week, 3 times a week, then every other day, and so forth. But it took 2 whole years before I was finally finished with the therapeutic intervention. The therapy, of course, was meant to help me get my range of motion back because I couldn't move my head at all. And I had my neck in what they call a Philadelphia collar. It was a therapeutic device to hold up my head because they told me that without that collar, it would be like trying to balance a basketball on the head of a pin. That's all they had holding up my head. I'm telling you the details of this story for a reason.
Yes.
so that you can understand that the amount of desperation I was feeling. I had lost all ability to work. I couldn't go to work. I was told I wasn't even allowed to do so much as reach out and grab a half gallon of milk out of the refrigerator. Too heavy for me, too much strain on my neck. So I was virtually immobile, and I was immobilized with this device that I was never allowed to take off, by the way, not while I slept and not even while I showered. It was made out of plastic. So I was to keep it on 24 hours a day, which I did for 2 years. At the end of that 2-year period, I finally healed enough to get a little part-time job in radio, where I had worked prior in the earlier part of my life. And I thought, well, maybe I can maybe this was a good thing, that the second half, or at least the last third of my life would be a little bit more integrated and have more meaning. When you go through an experience like that. I should explain that because I couldn't work and couldn't earn an income, I had to live on the street. That is, I lived on the sidewalk. I was a street person for 2 weeks shy of 1 year. So for 50 weeks, I was living outside, ultimately in a tent at a campground. But the tent was my only protection from the weather, and I had a sleeping bag, and that was it. 2 pair of jeans, 3 shirts, 1 pair of shoes, and that was really the sum total of my worldly possessions. I had no income whatsoever. I had fallen through the cracks of the social welfare system. I had run out of my food stamp allocation. I simply had no way to stay alive. So I wound up panhandling on the streets, asking people for a little loose change that they might have collected. Then I finally got a little part-time job at a radio station in a little town called Medford, Oregon, which is where I live, just outside of Medford, in a smaller city called Ashland. And I got a little job at a radio station there, a weekend job, and I was good at what I did. I had been in broadcasting for 25 years, so I knew the ropes, I knew the game. So I was promoted immediately. They asked me if I wanted to work full-time because they lost one of their full-time announcers, and would I like to take that job? Of course I took it. And inside of 3 months, they made me actually the program director of the radio station, because I had years and years and years of experience in broadcasting. Now here I was, 3 months after getting off the street, and I'm the program director of this radio station. I wasn't earning a great deal of money because it was a small town radio station, but I was earning enough to stay alive at least.
Yes.
And so I had turned my life around. Now, Caroline, that's when desperation really struck, because here was my experience. Having come back off the street, found a little home, a little cottage in the back of somebody's yard. They had a little cottage in the back, kind of a grandmother apartment. And I took that little cottage, and I was back into the swing of things, and I realized, is this it? I'm working 12 and sometimes 13, 14 hours a day. I'm back into the daily grind, scraping together enough money to pay my little rent and put some groceries in the refrigerator. Is this it? At 52, I'm back into this circus. Somebody, like Peggy Lee said in her song, send in the clowns, because this must be some kind of a joke. This can't be what life is about.
Right.
And it was then that I woke up in the middle of the night, around 4 or 5 months after I got off the street. I threw back the covers. It was 4:23 in the morning. I recall this event vividly, of course. And I walked out into the small little larger part of the cottage, which they laughingly called a living room. But it was just where the couch was and a couple of chairs. And I sat there on the couch and I thought, what does it take to make life work? How did I get? I've got a lot of talent. I've got a lot of smarts. I've got a lot of, creativity, and I'm incredibly good looking,
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
with all this going for me, how in the world can I be here at 52? Surely there's something I don't understand about life and how it works, the understanding of which would change everything. And I called out to God that night in the middle of the night. In fact, I found a yellow legal pad on the coffee table in front of me that I'd been taking some notes on about something, and I turned the page over and I began writing a very angry letter to God. What does it take to make life work? And what have I done to deserve a life of such continuing, unending struggle? And I recall calling out to God, Caroline, in the middle of the night, somebody just tell me the rules. I'll play. I promise I'll play. Just tell me the rules. How does the game go?
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
And I heard a voice.
Wow.
On my right shoulder. And it was as clear as anything you could imagine. And the voice said to me, Neale, do you really want answers to all of these questions? Or are you just venting? Of course, I turned around, there was nobody there. And I thought, great, now I'm losing my mind on top of everything else.
Right, right.
But you know what, Caroline? At the same time, I felt uncommonly peaceful, almost to the point where I felt almost tearful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, tearful with joy. Have you ever had a moment in your life when you were so happy that you actually cried?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
That tears of joy. I just thought, oh my gosh, and then I didn't know why I was crying. I just knew that I felt totally filled with peace and comfort and love. Never felt so loved in my life. So I began writing on my yellow legal pad questions. I thought, I was invited to ask questions. Why not? And I began asking those questions. And I received answers to the questions I was asking. And I scribbled down the answers that I was hearing. Now the voice moved from over my shoulder inside my head. And it felt like a voiceless voice, almost like the voice of your own thoughts.
Right.
And but they weren't thoughts I ever had. They were not offering me ideas I ever had before. It's just concepts and ideas I had never dreamt of before. So I was taking them down, like taking dictation. It felt very much like taking dictation. Mm-hmm. I'm doing that for several hours, from 4:30 until about 9:30 or 10:30 in the morning. It was a Saturday morning, as I remember. I didn't have to go to work. And I was sitting there all morning long writing all of this down until around 9:30 in the morning. And I realized I had dozens and dozens of pages of handwritten question answer. And that was the beginning of what became Conversations with God. And I want to share with your wonderful audience the fact that I did not sit down to write a book. This became a process of journaling. Every morning at 4:23 for the next several months, I found myself being awakened again at around 4:15 or 4:20 or 4:25 in the morning. And I would rush to my yellow legal pad and return to my process, because it was, Caroline, it was healing me, bringing peace, and joy, and comfort to my life. And I was feeling totally healed, but I'd never dreamt. In a million years, I never dreamt that anyone would see this stuff. This was just personal journaling, like a personal diary. But then somewhere in the dialogue, Caroline, it said to me, this will one day become a book. And I thought, I gotcha. Now I gotcha. Because that was measurable. Everything else I was receiving was conceptual, theoretical, mystical, but this was a measurable statement. This will one day become a book. Either it would or it wouldn't, but I could measure the outcome. Yes. So I thought, now I will know whether this is true, whether what I imagine is happening is really happening or not, because I was a man of the world. I had been in the media, I had been in the radio and television. I understood perfectly well that publishers were not about to publish a book from an unheard of, unpublished author who claims to be talking to God. So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna challenge God, or challenge whatever's happening here, and I'm gonna wrap this up and send it to a publisher and dare him to publish it. And I called it Conversations with God, because that's exactly how I experienced it.
Right.
And the rest is, as they say, is publishing history.
Yes.
They accepted the book for publication. They accepted what became the book, I should say. They took all these notes that I gathered and had them printed and had them published in this first book. And they rushed it, by the way. I should say they actually rushed it to print. They printed it in a very short period. Most books take around 6 to 8 months at least, if not longer, to go from receiving it to on the bookshelf. This took about 3 months for the entire process.
Wow.
They rushed it to print, and within 7 weeks of its being published, it was on the New York Times bestseller list.
Oh my goodness.
Where it stayed for 2.5 years. For 2.5 years of consecutive weeks, never leaving the New York Times bestseller list. Pretty soon, after about 2.5 years, I received a plaque in the mail. It said, from your friends at the publishing house, from your friends at Putnam Publishing, commemorating 1 million copies having been sold.
Oh my goodness.
Someone had said to me that I would sell 1 million. To an author, that's like a recording artist having a gold record or a silver record for having sold 1 million copies of a song. This was 1 million copies of a nonfiction book. Very, very difficult to do in the publishing business. And so I realized, oh, wow, something extraordinary has occurred here. The book wound up being translated into 37 languages, and it was sold around the world. And the rest, as they say, is publishing history.
Yes, yes. And even though the newest book is called Book 4, but it's not the 4th book.
It's the 4th book to be titled Conversations with
God. Okay.
There are 4 books in the Conversations with God series. I've written other books, Friendship with God, Communion with God, The New Revelations, but it's the 4th book that carried the title Conversations with God.
I see.
That particular series, it's book number 4, but it has a subtitle, Awaken the Species.
Yes.
I was invited to embrace a 3rd invitation. In the first book, I received an invitation that I was asked to pass along, not just for me, pass this invitation along to the rest of humanity. And the invitation was to change the world's mind about God. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And I thought, wow, what an invitation. Change the world's mind about God. The second invitation I received was give people back to themselves. And when I asked God, what does that mean? She said, it means to return them to their awareness of their true identity. Literally give them back to themselves and invite others to do so as well. But I really thought that was the end of the dialogue. I never thought there'd be another dialogue titled Conversations with God. I didn't lose touch with this experience, but I hadn't received any book-length conversations. But then on the second day of August of 2016, just this last August, I was awakened in the middle of the night with the same feeling that I had that first night at 4:23 in the morning, that something wanted to come through. And I said I jumped out of bed, of course, went right to the keyboard. I said right in the keyboard, I was typing in the words, I thought I was done with this. I thought there would be no more book-length exchanges. And, I had already accepted the first 2 invitations. I've done my best with that. Okay. God said there's a 3rd invitation. A 3rd invitation? Change the world's mind about God. Give people back to themselves. What's the 3rd invitation? And God said, awaken the species. Neale, awaken the species and invite everyone else to do the same. Invite everyone who comes to this material, everyone who reads this dialogue, and those who hear about it, to use their life as the mechanism by which our species can finally awaken from its long slumber, from its long period of unknowing. So that's the 3rd invitation, and that's book number 4. And the book also tells us how we can do that.
Wow. Wonderful.
So I'm
amazing.
Sorry to go on.
No, please. It's just to hear I like I said, I've know of your work. I've read book 1, 2, 3, Home with God, and now definitely have to read book 4. So I am very familiar, but to hear it from you, it's just like, it's all new to me now. because it's so amazing. It's so amazing.
I never dreamt, Caroline, I couldn't have dreamt in 1,000 years that my life would have taken that kind of a turn. It's become, of course, my life work now for the past 22 years.
Yes.
And it's moved me right into my 70s, whereas I really thought by this time I'd be retired and sitting at home watching soap operas on television. It turns out that I'm just traveling the world.
Yes, yes.
And continuing this work across the globe.
Yes, and it's work that is needed, especially in this day and age. Just like you said, Spirit kind of woke me up too in the middle of the night. It's around 1:30, so Spirit woke me up at a little bit earlier time than 4 in the morning, but told me to start the show, and I didn't argue. I knew, and I didn't know anything about starting an internet radio show, and Spirit gave me the title, Awake to Oneness, because it was my awakening to oneness that, for me, everything made sense when I understood that all there is God, and we're all a part of God. So, and we're all a part of each other. To me, it's like, I get it. Now, I want to help awaken the rest of the world to that simple truth, because I think that's step one to awakening, is knowing that we're all one. Then, and once we're all one, there will be peace. Because if you do something to another person, you're only doing it to yourself. So it's like, okay. And I accepted the challenge. When Spirit said, do it, I said yes. And this is so wonderful. Please tell us more about the book 4, though. Tell us, Awaken the Species. So tell us a little bit more on how God tells us to do that.
Well, first of all, something astonishing was said in book 4. I was told that we don't have to do this by ourselves. That is, the human race, the human race is not alone in this undertaking. And so we shouldn't feel that we're all alone having to do this. I was told that we're being given assistance on a regular basis by highly evolved beings from off of this planet. That is, highly evolved beings that exist in another dimension in the cosmos, and that they are assisting humanity both metaphysically and even in some cases physically by embodying human form here on the earth and walking among us. Rarely, very rarely, I was told, every several thousand years perhaps, a highly evolved being takes human form from birth to death in order to model the messages that highly evolved beings are sending to us about what it means to be an awakened species. So that's one of the most interesting pieces of information that I was given in this book. And I was then told the differences between how an awakened species behaves as opposed to how human beings in an unawakened state live their lives. So I was given that comparison. I was given actually a list of 16 differences between highly evolved beings and human beings who are behaving in an unawakened state. Then I was given a list of 7 ways to integrate those higher behaviors into our everyday life, ways that we could make that part of our daily experience of ourselves, our daily expression of who we are. So I was also given a list of 5 ways to know if you are behaving as an awakened being. One of the most important messages of the book was this. God said to me, you know what? You're already awakened. You simply are not behaving that way. And what you need to know, I said, you simply don't know that you're awake. I said to God, how can I be awake and not know that I'm awake? God said, oh, it's really very simple. Have you never heard a sound, a bump or a thump in the middle of the night and thought it was part of your dream, only to then suddenly realize, oh no, wait a minute, I'm actually awake. That wasn't my dream. I'm actually awake.
Right.
I thought I was dreaming, but I was not dreaming. I'm actually awake. God said, have you ever had an experience like that? I said, of course. Oh, most people have had that experience.
Yes.
God said, there you are.
Okay.
So you're right now, you're awake, but you don't know it. So you think that you're living in this dream. You think that you're living in this nightmare. You think that you're living in this experience that's not in your awakened state. But in fact, if you decide to act as if you are fully awake, you'll see your life change virtually overnight. So I asked God, well, what does that look like? That's when he gave me that list of 16 behaviors.
Okay.
And that's when I was given all those other tools that I mentioned, which is way too much to go into here in programs.
Right.
But it's very specific, and it gives some very specific guidelines on how we can get from where we are to where we want to be. And that's basically the message of the book.
Wow. Amazing. Oh, now I know we can't go into all of them. Can you give us a few of the 16, like maybe just a few, like one or two important of the 16?
Well, I can give you the single most important one, though, what I consider to be the most important.
Okay.
The most important difference between, well, there are several that are really important. The major difference between highly evolved beings and us is that highly evolved beings are never for any reason whatsoever violent. They do not use violence, not just physical violence, but verbal or emotional violence. They simply don't ever utilize verbal, physical, or emotional violence as a tool to get what they want, as a means of communication, as an emotional expression. It simply never happens.
Okay.
So, and for the very reason that you gave earlier,
Mm-hmm.
for the very reason that you announced, because highly evolved beings understand that there is only one of them,
Yes.
that they are simply aspects and facets of the same diamond,
Yes.
and that what you do to another, you do to yourself. What you fail to do for another, you fail to do for yourself.
Yes.
So for that reason, it would never occur to them to be even verbally violent, much less physically violent to each
Yes.
other. But to give you an interesting, more down-to-earth, functional kind of a difference, the one that struck me deeply was this. God said, highly evolved beings see what is so, and they do what works. Whereas human beings see what is so, but nevertheless, having seen it, they do what does not work.
Mm.
And I said, well, give me an example. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
She said, well, I'll give you a very simple example. You can see that what's so is that if you want your children to grow up without any violent tendencies, it does not work. It does not work to place them in front of television sets, video screens, video games, much less huge screens in motion picture theaters where all they're seeing is violence. Even cartoons where the cartoon characters are bonking each other on the head as a means of getting through their frustrations. And they call that comedy. They call that a comedy.
Yeah, it's so true. That's so true.
So God says, we can see now more than ever. You see 13-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, even 6-year-olds using, now they find daddy's gun and they get mad and they go in the other room and shoot their mother. And we read these horrific stories on the internet and we go, oh my God. But what we can't say, where would they get such an idea? Because we've given them the idea. We've actually taken them into the theaters. God says, you want to know what hypocrisy is? Here's hypocrisy. If you take a small child into a motion picture and you see a sexual experience, a sexual expression of human love and human passion, you cover their eyes, look, and you get the child out of there as fast as you can. But if you see a war scene where there's hand grenades and blowing people up and bodies are flying all apart and there's blood all over the screen, isn't this a great movie, son? Wow, what a great film.
So true. It's so true.
Expressions
Yes.
of human love and human passion are censored from the child's eyes. Don't look at that. You shouldn't see that. But if it's about violence and body parts flying all over the screen, we sit there and tell the child what an exciting film that was. So the child gets the direct message from the parent that this is an approved of behavior.
Yes.
So you know, it's one example.
Yes.
I'll give you another example. We understand perfectly well. We know from our data and from all the facts that are laid before us that smoking doesn't work if you want to live a long and healthy life. We know that.
Yes.
It's not something we don't know. So highly evolved beings see what is so and they do what works. That is, they don't smoke.
Right.
And we see what's so, then and
so true. So true.
We know that if we over imbibe with red meat at every single meal, morning for sausage with breakfast and hamburgers for lunch and steak for dinner, every day of the week, and for that matter, drink certain liquids. I know that you think this is water, but actually it's gin. And I have a couple of glasses of this every evening and most mornings as well. All that doesn't work. We clearly see that it doesn't work, and we do it anyway.
This is so true.
And I can give you a list of 14 of those behaviors. I'm just giving you 2 or 3 obvious ones.
Right.
So what God was saying to us, you know what? Highly evolved beings, they see what is so and they do what works. Human beings see what is so and do exactly the opposite. You are a self-destructive species. Cut it out.
Yes.
Stop it.
So true. Oh my goodness. It's so true.
To say nothing of the proliferation of weapons. How many times do we have to open our computer in the morning and see a story in the headline of somebody who shot somebody else for no reason? No, I mean, not a life-ending reason. But now we've decided that, you know what? Now we have a political system that's starting to turn around from what it used to be. And not only do we not want to prohibit guns in schools, we now want to require schools to allow guns to be brought in and carried by security guards. And we can no longer ban weapons on college campuses. The gun lobby has won the day. And, we're supposed to be able to, after all, because we're Americans and we carry a sidearm. I mean, it was like the Old West.
Oh, my goodness.
Very clear that none of this works, but we do it anyway. I mean, excuse me, but stop it.
Yeah, really, truly. It's so true. And like you said, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. Yes. But we do it anyway. Yes.
Trying to end violence by using violence, to end anger by using anger. Einstein made it very clear. You can't solve a problem using the same energy that created it. We know this, but we're doing it anyway.
So true.
So the question becomes how to stop the insanity. You know what the definition of insanity, of course, everyone knows the definition. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result. Hello.
Yes.
Birth to Neale.
Yes.
Birth to Neale. Stop it.
Yes. Oh, so true, Neale. Oh my goodness. And it's so refreshing because it is so, I mean, everything you're saying is a no-brainer. Who can argue with it? But we still do it. Yeah.
There's a reason why, Caroline, to give humanity a little bit of a break. Let's understand something. We are the infants, not even the children, but really the infants of the universe. Mm-hmm. Let me give you an illustration of what I'm saying. If you took the Earth, the age of this planet, mm-hmm. overlaid it on top of a calendar year, just so we could kind of hold it in our mind how long we've been here. So you take the age of the earth and put it on a calendar year, that when the earth first was created, when it first arose, would be January 1st. And today would be the 31st of January, a year later. If you use that as a scale,
yes,
the first form of human life, the first single cell, elementary form of life, I shouldn't say human life, of any kind of life, the first single cell of life didn't appear until the end of February. More sophisticated life forms, fishes in the sea, birds in the sky, didn't appear until the end of November. Dinosaurs didn't appear on that scale until the 12th of December. Dinosaurs did not disappear from the earth on that scale until December 25th. Humanoids, not human beings, but humanoids, that is, mammals that walked on two legs and dragged their knuckles on the ground, they didn't appear until December the 29th. Human beings, as we know them today, didn't appear until December 31st. And the entirety of human history took place in the last 60 seconds of the year.
Okay.
That's how young we are in relationship to the age of just this planet. Forget about the cosmos.
Right. Okay.
Compared to the age of the cosmos, we're not even 1 millisecond long, not even 1 nanosecond. A nanosecond, by the way, is 1/1,000,000th of a second. We're not even that old. So to give us a break, we're acting like babies, like infants, because that's what we are.
Okay. Yes.
And that at least helps us to understand.
Yes.
Why would we know this stuff and continue to do it anyway? However, while that helps us to understand it,
Yes.
it should excuse it. Now it's time for us to awaken to who we really are. Fortunately, the process of growth is exponential. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 process. It's a 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 process. That is, the rollover, the fold over is exponential. And we don't need millions and millions of years to get to where we need to be. It can happen in a very short period of time. We're seeing that now with human technology. Our technology, even what we're doing right now.
Yes, yes.
This very experience of doing this two-way video,
yes,
would not have been possible even 8 or 9 or 10 years ago, much less when I was a kid. I mean, for somebody as old as me, this is pure science fiction.
Yes, yes.
This is science fiction.
Yes, yes, yes.
You know, so
yes, yes.
So we're making. I bring that up to indicate to our audience that there is hope. We can arise out of our infant behaviors. All we need are some models, people who are willing to self-select, to choose themselves, to model their own highest thought about what it means to be human and what it means to be divine and what it means to be both at once. We've had some models like that walking the planet. A few we know of whose lives have been so extraordinary that we remember them thousands of years later. Buddha and others like that. We remember their lives to this day. The question is, what would it take for us to be willing to step into that? One of the first things we'd have to do, Caroline, is let go of all of our teachings from our ancestors. I had wonderful parents. I had a wonderful mother and a wonderful father, but even my father taught me things that it took me 30 years to unlearn. I had to unlearn what my father...
I have to show. Now, you said the word unlearn. I don't know if you can read my shirt, but it says listen and unlearn. That's what the shirt, yes, it says, I don't know if you guys can see it. Listen and unlearn. And I actually got it from Agape Revelations 2015. But the theme was listen and unlearn. Yes. So I just...
You know, because my father taught me stuff. Yeah, I'm going to tell you something that you need to hear. When I was a child, my father taught me that, my father, he didn't teach me, he didn't sit down and say these things to me directly.
Right.
He taught me by his example, by
Yes.
sharing his thoughts. So what I got was that women are not as smart as men.
Okay.
They have their place. They have their place in society, but they can't be leaders. They can't be like presidents. They can't be. They're not as smart as men. And Jews are not trustworthy.
Oh my goodness.
And
Yeah.
and I remember that when I was a child, I was walking through the zoo with my dad. Had taken us to the zoo, and I had some cotton candy, and I dropped the cotton candy on the ground. And I was all so sad because it was all full of dirt. And my dad said, "Don't worry, there's more where that came from." And he got me some more immediately. That was one of the positive things that he taught me. He taught me a very positive thing. There's more where that came from. Don't cry. But you know what's sad? In the next moments after he got me that new cotton candy, he taught me something that was not very positive. I was walking down the pathway, at the park, at the zoo.
Yeah.
And I was so excited I had my cotton candy after all. And I made sure I wouldn't drop it this time. And a man was coming down the pathway toward us. He happened to be a black man. And I walked up to him. He was smiling at me because he saw how happy I was. And I was smiling back at him. And I said, "Hi, mister, would you like some of my cotton candy?" And my dad pulled me away from that man. Jerked me away. And he whispered in my ear, "That's trash."
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes a lifetime.
Yeah.
You have to call your father wrong. See, a great spiritual mentor of mine once said to me, "Look to see who you'd have to make wrong in order to get it right."
Yes.
Who would you have to make wrong? So finally, when I was about 45 years old, I finally got, you know what? There are some women who are just as smart as I am.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's hard to believe, but there actually are some women who are even smarter than I am. And there are some Jews who you can trust with your life. And there are some black people who are so wonderful, so extraordinary. Stop it. Stop it.
Yes.
So I had to throw out so much of what I had learned. Not that my father was a mean person, he wasn't.
Right.
But he was given, what they have to understand, he was given what he was told.
Exactly.
What they were told, it's just an endless. But it's time now, Caroline, it's time.
Yes.
It's time for us to awaken.
Yes.
It's time for us to move to the next expression of who we really are. And it's not like this is the first time we've heard this. The great spiritual masters of all time have been telling us this for thousands of years.
Yes.
This is not new age stuff. This is...
Exactly. It's very true. Yes. This is so true. It's so true. Yes. Yes. Eons. The ancient wisdom has been teaching us this for eons, and now science is teaching us this. Yes. That's the amazing thing. That's what woke me up, was science. Yes.
Well, maybe now we'll believe from science what we could not believe from God. Isn't that an irony?
Yes. Well, actually, I see how spirituality and science are saying the exact same thing now. Yeah. They're saying the same thing. Yeah. So that's what, it was. I studied metaphysics off and on since the 70s. But what woke me up to oneness was quantum physics. When quantum physics talked about everything being interconnected. I'm like, I get it. And when I understood oneness, it just, everything made sense to me. Yeah. It was just very clear to me.
Well,
yes.
Let's tell the rest of the world.
Yes.
Let's just continue the process, because this is our time. By the way, I happen to think that that's why we came at this particular time. I don't think that you and I and others who think like us are here by accident. This is not a coincidence. I think we came at this particular juncture in our evolutionary process so that we might, in fact, assist in advancing that evolutionary process by awakening the species. This is our self-assigned mission, if you please.
Yes.
So I could be wrong about that, but
No, you're not wrong. I know in my heart that, you know, my show, Awake to Oneness, and that came direct to me from Spirit. You know, I wanted the show, the mission of the show to be in the title. So yeah. And I know that's my mission, and that's why I've aligned with Humanity's team. Same mission. So it's so, yes. And I say, yes, that is my mission. What was the old TV show with Star Trek? Oh, was it Star Trek? I don't know. The one where do you accept your mission? And maybe it was
your Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible. Okay. See,
your mission. Should you choose to accept it?
So, yes, and I choose to accept it. And the mission to me is not impossible. You're exactly right. There are no accidents. We're here in alignment to do this work. At this time, it's so crucial. And I believe the work is getting done. It's getting done. Yes.
Yeah, and since we're on that topic, Caroline, let me share something with you. I always tell my audiences, it's very dangerous if we think that we have to somehow save the world.
Right.
People could throw up their hands and say, wait a minute, as wonderful as this all sounds, even a bunch of us, even a couple hundred of us, even a couple of thousands of us are not going to change the world. So, and I want to say, I agree with you if you think that how you're going to do it is by going out there and trying to change the world. You know, if you can just give enough speeches or write enough books or do enough television programs like you're doing or whatever, if we can somehow do enough, then we're going to change the world. That's not going to do it. So I agree with you. Right. So what Conversations with God made it very clear to me, and this last book, book 4, has made it crystal clear, is that the way that everything will change on this planet, the way that people will awaken, is not by us going out there and trying to proselytize or trying to evangelize or somehow change people's mind about things. Rather, how it will happen is when each individual sees their own challenge as rising their own personhood, their own individual, is to raise their own consciousness to such a level that they become a living, breathing, walking demonstration of what it means to be divine. When we choose to be to use our own lives as a model of divinity, or as close as we can get, we're all human, but as close as we can get to it.
Yes.
By that device, by modeling the behavior, not telling other people that they have to change, but by us changing into that. You know, Gandhi, of course, put it perfectly, be the change you wish to see. So if we took Gandhi's advice, and suddenly millions and millions of people took God up on it, yes, and decided to walk through the world in that particular way, pretty soon the first domino would fall. It doesn't take long for us. It would not take long for us to say, you know what? She knows something that I don't know. She's acting in a way that I really admire, that I really want to emulate, that I really think could be beneficial to me. I'm going to be more like her. I'm going to be more like him. Yeah. And we start imitating those around us who we most admire. And it's by that device, by simply paying attention to ourselves. How am I being? What am I thinking? What am I saying? What am I projecting? How am I loving? How am I expressing divinity in me, through me, as me? If I choose to pay attention to that and put all my focus on that, then I will no doubt impact the lives of others without trying, without making that the point of it, but just as a secondary, as a second and third level outcome of the transformation of the individual self. So I have been saying to people all over the world, pay attention to this, and others will pay attention, and they will then shift their notion of who they really are. That's what all great spiritual teachers have ever done.
Yes, that's just so true. It's something you said, or something I read in Conversations with God. You said, when you focus on just doing, you end up with a bunch of doo-doo. It's focusing on being. And then, like you said, it begins with being. And being that oneness, living your truth, being it authentically. And then others will see that. But that's all one needs to really do, is to be it. And it's not about the doing, it's about the being. And that I remember, I know I heard you say it, I can't remember where, because I've read your books and I've listened to you many times, but I think I'll never forget when you said, when you focus on just the doing, you just end up with a pile of doo-doo. So that I got from you.
Yeah, and it's true.
Yes.
My whole life is testimony to that. I spent the first 45 years of my life in exactly that place. Doing this and doing that, doing this and doing that. And you know, and it got me nowhere. At 50 years old, half a century on the planet, and I woke up after half a century. This is all I have to show for it? A bunch of broken hearts behind me? A bunch of broken promises, both to others and to myself? This is it? No, there's got to be more going on here than meets the eye. Whereas, as Shakespeare so wonderfully put it, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. Oh my goodness, this is just, Neale, I could just go on and on. I don't want to let you go. I love you so much, and this has been so amazing. Now, before we go though, we touched upon the differences between the awakened person, like the most important thing of telling the difference between a person that's awake and asleep. But then you said that in the new book, it also talks about tools we can use to help us to awaken, to be that person that we're aspiring to be. So can you share a tool that we can use, something of that nature?
I'd be happy to. I'm going to give you actually two or three.
Okay.
One tool is never again have another negative thought, or at least never entertain it for more than a moment. Or as they say, don't give it a second thought. Exactly. Don't give it a second thought. So if some negative idea, negative thought enters your mind, don't give it a second thought. Get it out of there and change your mind immediately. Whatever it is, whether it's a thought about the weather, or whether it's a thought about another person, a thought about your own future and your future prospects, whatever it might be. If you find yourself entertaining a negative emotion or a negative thought, just drop it. You have the power.
Yes.
You actually have the ability to do that. Most people think that emotions are things that are happening to them, but emotions are things that are happening through them, that they're deciding to allow to be expressed and to continue to be expressed. Even if it's true, even if it's, to be fair, even if it's true that an emotion might overcome us, we don't have to entertain it and allow it to stay there for more than a moment. We can say, you know what, I don't want that. And so one tool that I encourage people to use is to step aside from any negative emotion or feeling or thought that they may briefly entertain. Another powerful tool that I was given by God is the tool of gratitude. God said that gratitude is one of the most powerful tools that we could ever have been given. And how that works is to be grateful for every single thing that has occurred, that is occurring now, and that ever will occur. Because gratitude is, first of all, it's transformative. It's hard to stay angry or stay upset or to stay frustrated or to stay in a negative space. It's hard even to stay fearful if we are living in gratitude, because gratitude is transformative. It changes our whole interior environment and the interior emotional landscape, if I could put it that way, of every human being. But you could ask, well, how can I be grateful for, I fall down the stairs and I break my ankle, or I pick up the phone and I hear that my best friend has just been killed in an automobile accident, or whatever it might be. How can I be grateful for the terrible events of life and for the deep challenges of life? And the only way we could find a place of gratitude is to understand what causes things to occur the way they are occurring, to see that all of life is a platform co-created by the lot of us, co-created by every human being in a collaborative process, far more sophisticated than most of us would imagine. And that the events of our planet, of our life, and of our individual experience are all co-created. That is, nobody creates anything in and of by themselves. Nobody creates anything unilaterally. Even the smallest individual event is co-created by more than one person. So when we understand that what we are doing as souls is we are collaboratively creating a platform upon which we could announce and declare, express and fulfill, become and experience the next grandest version of the greatest vision ever we held about who we are. Or to put it in simple language, when we see that the tough moments of life are being given to us really as a gift, an opportunity for us to embrace our highest notion of who we are and demonstrate it through our response to that so-called negative experience. All of the world's great spiritual masters, I don't care who you want to name, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Mother Mary, Mother Teresa, male and female alike, all the great spiritual masters have done exactly that. They've taken a sow's ear and turned it into a silk purse, so to speak. They've made lemonade out of lemons because they've understood that all that's coming at them is giving them an opportunity to express all that is coming through them, thus to demonstrate at the next highest level who they really are.
So true.
So masters use gratitude as a means of transforming their response to the exterior event. Now, here's where it gets interesting, Caroline. When we change our interior holding of what's happening in the exterior world, the interior holding causes us to project energy that's so positive, it actually changes, or it can change what's happening in our exterior world.
So true.
And then that's how we create miracles.
Yes.
That's how people who have been told by the doctors they're dying wind up not dying.
Yes.
And other miracles are changed the same way. Miracles are not changed by complaining about the negative outcomes of life, but by, in fact, seeing them in a different way.
So true.
Seeing them as an opportunity for God to work her magic in and through our life. So that's the second powerful tool that I invite people. I write much more about this in the book, The Only Thing That Matters, but that's the second powerful tool that I give people. Get rid of negative thinking and use gratitude as a powerful device, powerful tool.
So true. Yes, I actually started keeping a gratitude journal. I think in 2010. And I just, I wake up, the first thing out of my mouth is thank you every morning. And I just write it pick up my journal and write. I did a lot of that this morning. It's a beautiful day here in the Poconos. I live in the Poconos and I love it here. And I focus on everything I'm grateful for in every now moment. I truly do.
And when we announce our gratitude for even the so-called not so good things in life,
yes,
that's when we know that we've reached a level of mastery.
Yes.
That we have found a way to embrace all of life.
Yes.
Exactly as it is and call all of it a blessing.
Yes. So true. Every challenge I look upon as a blessing. I say a blessing in disguise. When I understood oneness, I also understood the peace that surpasses all understanding. The first time I understood that. Yes.
There you are. That year I spent on the street was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Yes.
And people hear me describe it and they think of, oh, what a nightmare. Actually, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful that I reached literally rock bottom and had nothing but one pair of shoes, 2 shirts, 2 jeans, 3 shirts. That's it.
Yes.
And asking for people for a quarter or a dime on the street, the greatest thing that ever happened to me. So now, knowing that, my life has taught me that. Now that I know that, I can be grateful ahead of time. You know what we do at my table at Thanksgiving? And on Thanksgiving at my table, we don't go around the table and talk about what we're grateful for that happened to us in this past year. We talk about each person announces what they're grateful for that's going to happen in the next year.
Oh, wow. That's cool. I like that. Yeah, I like that. Yes. Yes, true.
Announce what you're grateful for ahead of time.
Yes.
Watch it happen.
Yes. Yes, that's so true. Because I also understand that everything is happening in the now. So our vision for the future is also here. It's all about raising our vibration so we can experience it. So being thankful for it ahead of time is how we bring it to us. We raise our vibration to meet it. Yes, yes, so true. Wow.
Well,
Yes.
and a third tool I want to give people is this. Forgive no one for anything. Never forgive anybody for anything.
I think I know where you're going with this, but go ahead.
I want you to take forgiveness off of the table. It's not part of your tool anymore of being a nice person. Because as soon as you think you have to forgive somebody for something, you must entertain the thought that somehow you have been hurt, damaged, or upset, or destroyed in some way, or injured in some way.
Right.
But if you really are that which God is, that notion that you've been hurt, damaged, injured in some way could not occur to you. Understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. Yes. God doesn't forgive us for anything. God will never forgive us for anything because God has no need to forgive us for anything because we can't hurt, frustrate, anger, or injure God in any way. What is God's response to our actions? Simple understanding. And I'll give you one more example of that in my life. If you're sitting at your table and you're having a birthday party for the grandchildren, and the 3-year-old reaches for the chocolate cake and knocks over everybody's milk, and one glass knocks over the next glass, knocks over the next glass, and pretty soon the entire table is a mess. You don't say to that child, "I forgive you. You go to your room, you'll stay there for the rest of the week, but I forgive you. Grandpa forgives you." We don't forgive children because we understand how a 3-year-old could possibly do such a thing.
Yes.
And when the child experiences being understood, understanding replaces forgiveness in such a huge, loving way that the love that the child experiences from us is truly experienced unconditionally. So God said to me in conversations with God, "Neale, understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. So even though you have to forgive me for going over our hour."
No, definitely not. No. Matter of fact, I wrote, and when I started the show, one of the first blogs I ever wrote was titled "No Apologies Ever Needed." That's why I said I feel like I know where you're going with this, but no apologies ever needed was the title of a blog I wrote about 2 years ago.
And
so yes,
but you have to forgive yourself as well. Understand why you did the things that you did. Nobody does anything deliberately to be mean or cruel. We make mistakes, but everyone who ever did anything at the time they did it thought it was, for whatever motivation they had, the best they could do. Everyone is doing the best they can at any possible moment. Or as my lovely Maya Angelou, who's just one of the lights of my life, just love reading her work. She put it, I thought, beautifully. She said, "When we know better, we do better."
Yes. So true. So true. So true. This has been so amazing. You could go over 100 times with the hour. It's just amazing. This conversation with Neale is so great because this is a conversation that we want to share with the world. And like you said, with the technology we have the technology to share it with the world. And I'm so thankful. I am so thankful.
I'm grateful to you for giving me the opportunity to reach even more people.
Yes.
A wonderful platform that you've created, and to be alongside of a wonderful person like you. You're just a glorious, sweet, gentle, caring, funny, humorous, delightful human being.
Thank you.
What a nice addition to my life our friendship is.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know one of these days I'm going to get to the West Coast. Only time I've ever been to the West Coast, Reverend Michael invited me to LA. That's where I got the t-shirt. But I'm going to get to the West Coast, the Northwest, and give you a big hug. Very soon.
Look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Neale. This has been amazing. This has been wonderful. Thank you. You have a wonderful holiday weekend, Easter weekend. We're pre-recording it. This will actually air next Friday, but you have a wonderful Easter weekend. Thank you so much. I appreciate this. I just wish I could reach you and give you a big hug through the computer.
Feel the energy. Thank you. Me back to you as well. And I hope all the people who are watching this got something out of it. And if they'd like to connect with me, they can just
please share.
They can just go to CWG, which stands for Conversations with God, cwgconnect.com. My website is cwgconnect.com.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And there will be a link on the below the video will be a link to your website. Thank you so much. Love you. Love you, Neale. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Okay. Bye-bye.